Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. Our show today is the March AI Pulse. I'm joined by co-host Tom Pringle, and I just realized I didn't actually update your title, so I can say Director of Pilot Research, but I think it's deeply involved in startup land at this point. Is that the right title?
That's absolutely the correct title as well. I think, you know what I'm like. I'm not a big fan of titles, generally speaking, but I suspect you call me what you like. I mean, Tom works, right?
You probably don't want, no, never mind. You're opening
Yes,
that up pretty broad.
yeah, that was potentially kind of a broad goal I was opening up there. Anyway, moving swiftly
Yes.
on.
Well, a lot of stuff's happened since our last episode. I know we ended up skipping last month, but lots of lots of other stuff going on. So I don't know. Let's get right into it. But I'm going to start with one that's dangerous in a way because I know it could probably consume the whole episode. But nonetheless, I can't help but want to talk about this one a little bit, and that's the current Anthropic / U.S. Department of Defense battle over their supply chain risk designation and / their Anthropic's refusal to allow them to put the terms of their contract as any legal use, which is we know is very dangerous. So yeah, and a lot of stuff happened there since the last time we did one of these,
Yeah,
and yeah.
you just thought you'd kick off with a lightweight, non-controversial subject to get us going, right?
Yeah, let's jump right in. I mean, why not? Yeah, it's interesting, and I mean, I reacted as you can imagine, because you know me well enough to know that to me, it's a very logical thing to put in a contract with the Pentagon that you don't want your model used for autonomous weapons, nor to spy upon the U.S. people.
Yeah, that
Um,
would be reasonable to me at least.
I mean, yeah, reasonable, yeah, and unfortunately, that was the battle that played out, and now we've apparently, Anthropic is being designated as a supply chain risk, which is, the thing we use for uh, things like we talked about Huawei because that was a potential Chinese Trojan horse, and TikTok was discussed there, and now Anthropic, a U.S. AI company, is
I'm assuming, and I don't know for a fact, but I'm assuming this is the first time that's ever happened that a US corporation has been declared a supply chain risk by the US government.
yes, it is. As far as I could find out, I did check a few different things, but yeah, and honestly, I mean that the supply chain risk designation really was designed for foreign threats, particularly things that could be a Trojan horse or some way to spy upon us. Um, and it's interesting because they didn't actually go. There were kind of two parts of that discussion, right? It could have gone further. It could have been no. Anthropic wouldn't be allowed to do business with any company, or any company couldn't use them that had any contracts with the DoD. But that actually didn't it wasn't implemented that way, because that would have meant that even in the non-Department of Defense parts of their business, they wouldn't have been able to do business with, companies like Google and Salesforce and Oracle and I don't know, a bunch of them, right? Amazon, I mean, any of the cloud, uh, any of the hyperscalers and cloud providers.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was also talk about using and this was kind of mind-boggling, using the Defense Production Act to force them to supply Claude to the Department of Defense with no restrictions. And that designation was used to compel companies during World War II and other times of war to do specific things that we wanted them to shift their production to, right? So like make more steel, or take those things that were going to be cars and make them tanks or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. So anyway, but I mean, the fallout was interesting too, and the fact that OpenAI, of course, immediately stepped in and went, "Oh, but we've negotiated this correctly, and we're not going to tell you how we did that exactly, but it'll all be fine." Um, and then, of course, the backlash immediately after that uninstalls
Yeah,
ChatGPT
there was a whole
uninstalls.
uninstall ChatGPT movement, wasn't there?
Yeah, 295% the next day. Claude shot to number 1 in the App Store.
It did.
Yeah, I think, several OpenAI Google employees signed an amicus brief supporting Anthropic when they filed their lawsuit against, DoD. So, I mean, it was a very interesting time, and it's still hanging there, right? I mean, the, um, the lawsuit will continue on, and that'll take some time to play out, I'm sure, but the whole thing was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I certainly won't be commenting on any of the legal aspects, that's for sure. Not least because I don't understand them. But no, I think there's two big topics that kind of come to mind that are sort of discussion worthy. And that's an understatement. There's many topics on this, but I mean the first I suppose is kind of the macro view of, and we might talk about this a bit later, about regulation of AI. And I think that's an interesting angle. I think the other thing is, and that also gets us into the whole debate about sovereignty as well. And we've talked about kind of sovereign AI in the past, and we've talked about the need for kind of capabilities in that regard. The other is kind of the use of AI in basically weapons.
Yeah.
And I mean, I suppose I've considered that latter one to be hugely tricky, morally tricky. That's an understatement again. I'm going to all understatements today, aren't I? Tricky is not doing the justice to the subject.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Very
it
considerate.
is true. I don't know that that's yeah.
I mean, like any technology, fundamentally, it's going to get applied at some point. Someone's going to do it.
Yes.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think that goes to a different conversation. But I have, as you can imagine, me being me, and hopefully the audience knows a little bit by now that I'm generally kind of quite skeptical about all of this, and feel that we're racing ahead with capabilities in a way which doesn't allow us, and I say us in the broadest sense possible, to pause, take a breath, and figure out what the ramifications might be, and whether doing this is a good idea just because we can, or whether we should be thinking that maybe this is not a place we want to explore.
Yeah. I mean, I admit when I hear the red lines, to me these are clear red lines, right? I mean, I don't I in my mind I definitely think the move to fully autonomous weapons is not the right way to go. I mean, talk about human in the loop. There are times when I talk about that as not scalable, but in this situation, I don't see how you move beyond that for now. Maybe there's someday when I can trust the systems, but I just keep having flashbacks to like, would you like to play thermonuclear war from the old movie? Um,
I mean,
I
even
y-
the most dependable top technology can go wrong, right? We know
yes,
it.
yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely
It
right.
decades old, established, kind of, I don't know, like kind of ERP style or core banking, or doesn't go wrong very often, but it can go wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're giving something access to deadly force, then I feel like it's a chance that it goes wrong is not one we should be taking.
No, I agree. And then, of course, the other red line, mass surveillance of our own people. Such a messy topic right now, and has been. I mean, we know for sure that certainly some parts of the government, ICE particularly, have been using some types of AI systems for surveillance, which that's at best that's questionable, and some would probably argue that it's clearly illegal. we've tried for years. There, the post 9/11 era did create some opportunities for the government to do certain types of metadata surveillance that was supposedly, less specific or whatever. I don't know, but it's that's a clear problem, and frankly scares me. The other piece, though, I mean, there was a lot of talk about the fact that we are using AI for targeting and things like that, and I mean, there are use cases in defense or war, whatever you want to call it, I'm not against. Like, I do think it makes sense to have systems that analyze large amounts of data in ways that help you make better decisions inside of a war environment. Sure, I wouldn't argue against that, although you could argue it didn't work that well in some of the things that we've done recently, but whatever. I guess I shouldn't comment on those. But it is very troubling when you go this far, and I just don't trust organizations enough when you say, "Well, we'll just do whatever's legal." Yeah, okay. You haven't proven that in the past, have you? Hmm.
Yeah, it'd be hard to argue that point. And I suppose to slightly change the direction of the conversation, because I feel, to be fair, I actually feel quite uncomfortable talking about it. I mean, I'm quite concerned about the nature of what's going on at the moment,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's not that it. I think not talking about it is not a good thing either, by the way. But to slightly lighten the tone, I suppose it did also help me, kind of back my view that I've always had a soft spot for Anthropic and Claude,
Yeah, yeah.
and seeing more people use it and get value out of it, I think there's a positive story there, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Tom. And I'll be honest. I mean, I've used Claude. That's been my primary model that I've relied on for quite some time now. And honestly, my use of ChatGPT had gone down to nearly zero already. So I can't me canceling my subscription. Sure, I did because there were lots of reasons, right? Part of it was just me feeling like, yes, I want to say I don't want to be a part of a company that did that. I just didn't, right? And supporting Anthropic, yes, absolutely. And I still use Gemini and I use Perplexity, and they're fine, right? They're great for different tasks. And but Claude has been my primary model already, and so me continuing that, and I have a Mac subscription because I use it quite a lot, and
Mm,
that's fine, right? And I do think that was an interesting fallout, and and frankly, I was a little, proud that people would make that kind of statement, honestly.
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I did notice in the immediate aftermath that I think Anthropic were having a little bit of a difficulty dealing with the load initially. I had a few little outages,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah,
to
they
be
did.
expected. I think when you're talking about the kind of increases in use that we sort of were talking about earlier.
Yes, yes, and I mean, they've recovered fine, and certainly
Oh
it's,
yeah, 100%.
yeah.
But it's funny
Uh,
to me, I suppose, that the reflection there, and funny and odd, I suppose, I don't know what's the right words for it, was in some of the work I do day to day, it made me realize when I couldn't access Claude that there were things that I've become not
mm,
100% dependent on, but very dependent on
yeah,
for
yeah,
my day to day. And,
yeah,
and that
I
was
have,
a realization in its own right of significance.
yeah. And I mean, for you to say that, because I mean, I've been using the tools for a while, and I do use them in a lot of parts of my research and work, and just, automating simple things that make, running a business easier.
Mhm.
And that mean, Claude Code Work has been a big part of that since that's been available, and I've been using it. So there were a few times then over those first few days when I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go take my dog for a walk or something because I can't get anything done right now.
Oh, no, indeed. Maybe that's a good thing. Taking the dog for a
It
walk is
probably
never
was a good thing. At
it's
least she
never a
enjoyed
bad
that.
idea. It's never a bad idea, Michael.
Exactly. All right, enough of that. That is that topic. It could keep going, but let's jump to
Yeah,
something else.
indeed,
So
indeed.
I don't know if you saw this, but OpenAI just released or they announced 5.4 um, with this what they're calling autonomous multi-step workflows, and I know some of the tests that were run came out really strong. But the bigger story underneath this for me was them starting to catch up in context window. And so I did run this again just to make sure because I remembered there that 5.3 was like 128,000 tokens, which is quite small compared to the other, leading models like Claude, 200,000, but they actually, it's a 1 million token in beta, and that's been available for a while, and I've been using that for a while. And Gemini, same thing, 1 million tokens. So it was like OpenAI catching up, basically.
Yeah, okay. And again, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I've never used OpenAI. Not for any particularly strong view or anything like that. It's just I haven't used it. But I'm curious. Someone I know said that the 5.4 represents kind of quite a big step forward,
Yeah.
at least in their use of the tool. And I think just kind of talks to the kind of continued development of this. I'm not quite sure about what was that phrase you used. I think I have it written down here. Autonomous multi-step workflows.
Yeah.
Doesn't roll off the tongue immediately,
No,
uh,
no, we're gonna have
but
to create an acronym for that one, AMSW, I guess.
sure. But I'm assuming um, is that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is that sort of an evolution of kind of agentic functionality? So you're saying
Yeah.
it's going to do this, then it can do this, then it can do this. So we know that we've talked about this in the past, that at kind of the start of the whole agentic thing, which I still have an issue with that word, sorry. Personal problems, Tom, personal problems. Is kind of, it was quite good at doing sort of fairly simple tasks, but then when you started layering multi-step tasks on, it started to get a bit trickier.
Yeah, that was it, and in some of the cases, you would see it would run a workflow. There would be a place where it would ask for approval for the next step, or it asks a question for the next step, and now it's basically saying you can orchestrate a complete workflow autonomously without, having those kind of breaks in the flow to check on certain things. I mean, you can. That's purely a choice, right? I mean, you can
Hmm.
certainly insert humans in there or other agents in there, frankly, whenever you need to. But yeah, that's an interesting, move forward, I think. And you're right, it does start to open up more and more complex workflows to automation, which
Yeah,
I think is good. I mean, obviously there's some caveats to that. You need the right governance in place and other things, but
yeah.
nonetheless, yeah.
And again, I'm afraid to say we're sort of what happens when it goes wrong, and how do you deal with that? And it's interesting. I'd be curious to learn more to what extent. So, as these processes that can be automated become more and more complicated, to what extent they're auditable.
Mhm.
So let's say, for example, something does go wrong, or someone takes issue with something that's happened, and you want to go back and say, right, how did we get from A to, in this case, Z, for example? I should
Yeah.
say Z, but I say Z.
Zed's
Um,
good. I like that. I always like the sound of it. I don't,
but I mean, that's kind of the question, right? So can you start picking apart and saying, look, we know that this happened at this point, and therefore we can explain why that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I would point you towards something I literally just published,
How
last
convenient.
weekend. Is called Governance by Design. I wrote a series on it, and then I turned that into a report, which frankly will probably end up being a book for this year. But the idea is that we have to shift the way we think about governance, right? We can't think about governance as a after the fact thing, which is what it's always been in business, right? It's, oh, how do we document that? Oh, we made a mistake, we need to go back and fix it, whatever. You can do that when it's human flow speed, but when it's machine speed and you start to scale up, I mean, one agent can make a lot of mistakes in a short period of time. 10,000 agents can make a catastrophic amount of failures in a short period of time. So a part of governance has to be immutable log, right? That has to be a part of it, because you have to be able, if it goes past the red line and your design, in that design, there should be circuit breakers that trip. But if for some reason it didn't, you still need to be able to go back and figure out what happened, and attribute that to some part of the system and make sure you fix that. So Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think that's, I mean, there's a fundamental change in approach, which I see that. I'm curious how many people will take that on board and make it actually happen rather
Yeah.
than, okay, we've got to move real fast to make this stuff happen. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. Um, and then in those cases, I feel
Mm.
like governance becomes a bit of an afterthought. It's funny, it reminds me years and years and years ago. Do you remember it would have been 20, oh, was it 2017 or 18, Oracle Adaptive Intelligent Apps?
Yeah, I think it was
Something
17, but
around then. Yeah,
right in that area, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. No, but it's just interesting. It reminded me because we were talking about machine learning, obviously, at the time. We didn't talk about AI in quite the terms that we talk about it these days.
Mm.
And no, it's just interesting because I sort of said exactly kind of to your point, which is, it's doing it right. And I think that's where a lot of the human in the loop conversation came in originally, I think, as well. Kind of if you get it right, it allows you to automate and get through a process very quickly or make decisions better, faster. But any AI tool, if it's set off in the wrong direction, doesn't have those safeguards in it, or those limits, whatever they are, it has the ability to do something, the wrong thing lots of times really, really fast.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that I mean, that's the point, right? It's scale and then the idea of how do you control it. And I honestly believe, and I'm starting to see some movement around this, although, certainly it's going to take a little bit of time. And also this year, I think as more and more companies go into production and try to scale agentic systems, they're going to find that governance after the fact doesn't work. It has to be governance by design. It has to be built in because you're talking about where do you add the deterministic parts to the probabilistic system? That's one question. But then
Mhm.
there's another one that says, like there are hard red lines that you don't want the system to cross. And now we're starting to realize that just because the system's probabilistic doesn't mean it doesn't need deterministic guardrails. Yes, but there's areas, gray zones, yellow zones, whatever you want to call them, where the system's moving towards something that could be bad, and you need to warp it back to center. That's also very important when you design these systems. It maybe even more so than the hard lines because those are easy to determine a lot of times, but the gray zones aren't necessarily, and you have to define those as well. So I think you're going to see some failures this year that are going to make companies wake up to the fact that they really do have to think of governance at the beginning, not at the end.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Here's a sort of slightly meta question, I suppose, big question, whatever you want to call it, is at what point do we say that corporate structures as they currently are also need rethinking?
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do is replicate human work with technology. And at some point, it's going to be more technology than it is humans. And at what point do we say that the traditional structure of the corporation is? And I'm sure there are many, many consultants out there who are talking about this very subject right now.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like kind of it's sort of been, and we've talked about this in the past, the displacement of human effort and labour in certain work types. Um, but when you're running an organisation of agents rather than humans, I feel like the rule book might have to change.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is more than a technology shift, right? I mean, this is not, and that was a part of my whole concept of writing a book last year about digital workforce, right? Because I really do think you have to think about this organizationally. You've got
Mhm.
digital workers, you have human workers, you have a hybrid workforce, you have to create new structures. And in fact, in some cases, agents manage agents. In some case, humans manage agents that manage agents. Sometimes humans manage it. Like there's all these different ways that the structure is going to be created underneath, and it depends on the use case and capabilities and risk and all those kinds of things as well. So it's not a simple let's just implement it, and not that it was ever easy or simple just implementing a new system, but that certainly had you know, at least it had the manageable types of risk and change, and this is in some areas just unknown risk and change right now. We have to work through
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not going to be easy, but
No, I
there's
don't
a,
think it
there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope it's not the train. Um,
one way of putting it. Yeah, fair.
I don't know what else to say. All right,
Yeah.
moving on to the next one because that's probably all we can say about that. This is more of an announcement than anything, but I don't know. NVIDIA just announced a new round of platform shifts and chip demand, and so I know they said this new Vera Rubin platform is like 10x performance per watt versus Blackwell, and 10x lower inference token cost, and they're projecting some massive amounts of like trillions of orders in 2027 or something like that. So yay, 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 NVIDIA. Things are going great there.
That sounds like business as usual.
It, yeah, I mean yeah, it does. And just the idea of us creating more powerful and more, in some ways, I shouldn't use the word economical, but you know what I mean when I'm saying.
Yeah, careful with that one.
Yeah, I mean, economical is probably not the right word, but more efficient ways to utilize the technology, I guess is the way to say that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I suppose, and here's, I mean, I just assume it's like, sorry, this is a really Game Boy level way of thinking about it, but my gaming machine, which sits behind me, has an NVIDIA GPU.
Yeah.
It's an RTX 3090, which at the time was kind of like the bee's knees, and now is quite a lot slower than all of the new kids on the block. I'm assuming that because there's been this massive investment in data center, massive investment in kind of specific compute capabilities and the network that supports super high bandwidth and stuff like that. So it's not going to suddenly become useless because I still game on my gaming PC. But it's interesting, isn't it, to see this kind of this evolution of hardware getting faster and more efficient, and what that does to kind of some of the big bets that were made as little as 6 to 12 months ago.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we decided years ago that Moore's law was a way underestimating the rapid change and evolution of power in chip power and compute power. So I mean, this just proves that we've continued to see that growth exponentially, and it's certainly a lot more than than the old world of Moore's law, I guess.
Yeah. Simpler time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to jump into this next story a little bit because there's something inside of this that I thought was really interesting, and
Yeah.
that's this idea that Yann LeCun left Meta and has started AMI Labs, raised a bunch of billions of dollars and whatever. But the interesting part's not that, although that I guess that was interesting to them. The interesting part to me was that this is a startup focused on world models, and I've talked about this a little bit before, and I think we even discussed this maybe in our show last summer. That there is the potential of next evolution of what has been language models are these world models, or this concept anyway, that it moves from text based to more of like a I don't even, these words sound funny, but a mental simulation of reality, I guess is the way I sort of think of it. It's it's a way to predict what's happening in the physical world, kind of akin to digital twin, although I realize that's a way under simplify that's way oversimplification of a very complex idea. But anyway, the point was that they're starting to move towards this next level of model, which is beyond what the language models do today.
Yeah. I mean, so indeed, I think your digital twin, by the way, is actually a good way of explaining it. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, an aircraft might be very complicated, and it
Yeah,
might have a digital twin. And the world's an awful lot more complicated than an aircraft, obviously.
correct.
And you can see how this plays out in terms of, say, this sort of a generalized simulation of the world, as it were.
Yeah,
And then you can start seeing specialist simulation, like say, pick something random, like I don't know, you are building a new type of boat and you want to test it in different types of water.
Mm.
And rather than do it physically, at first you do it in a computer, and you sail it around the Caribbean and the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean and so on and so forth to see how it performs, and different weather conditions, etc., etc. It
Yeah.
kind of makes perfect sense as far as I'm concerned. It's interesting. It reminds me of being at,
Yeah.
and this is not me claiming that I have any kind of great insight, but when I was first into computer gaming, one of my first routes in was flight simulator, uh, flight
Yeah.
simulation generally. And I always figured that what we'd end up seeing ultimately was kind of like a digital copy of the world, and
Mm.
flying around that. Now,
Yeah.
my imagination wasn't quite as quite capable of getting to where we're getting to today with this, but you can see where it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then you have the different models, high fidelity. You can see it becomes obviously then a way of kind of different use cases and different opportunities for
Yeah.
commercialization. It seems significant to me.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, if you if you think about just the fact that that AI moves into the physical world when you talk about autonomous driving or robotics, right? So I thought that was the other point on underneath this that I thought was really interesting, though, is that it changes the way the model's trained. So if you think about the way that a child learns, they don't learn by words at first, especially they learn by experience, and that's basically what they're saying with the world model is that this is learning based on physical reality instead of this conceptual or textual reality.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I wonder, so we've thrown supercomputers at weather forecasting for many, many years now.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, but I don't always think the weather forecast is accurate.
Not to great effect, I think was the point.
So I'm curious what this team is doing that's different
Mhm.
to that kind of massive scale
Yeah.
simulation. And look, I can't claim any expertise, but that seems like a natural comparison in my head. From a
Mhm.
technical perspective, it's probably completely different.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I definitely think that conceptually, the idea when I first read about this before is that yes, there's got to be. We know there's going to be an evolution beyond language model. What's the next thing? And this certainly does seem like it could be because it does tie in rather than just this, corpus of textual knowledge. It ties in physical reality to that, which it does simulate what how we think humans, at least partially how humans learn. So it's
Mhm.
interesting if nothing else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even you think about kind of the use of language, even if you're the finest wordsmith on the planet, there's probably things that there probably are things, there will be things that will defy your ability to explain them.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's oh God, oh dear, get seriously technically philosophical at this point.
Yeah. I maybe that is what happens in the next iteration. I don't know. And maybe it is
Oh dear. Yeah,
philosophical. I mean, yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Anyway, well, and we talked about new language model releases. The new Gemini Pro release 3.1 Pro came out, and I also I know Apple announced that that was going to be the core of the new series. So there's the new Apple partnership for Apple Intelligence, and then also apparently Gemini scored really well on a lot of the
Hmm.
benchmarks. So I've definitely, as we've seen, a model moves forward, another one moves ahead of it, another one moves ahead of it, another one. So the race is gonna continue, but it is interesting to see that, plus the fact that apparently this month, so they gotta hurry, the Apple, intelligence will get something that's finally somewhat intelligent, I think.
Oh,
Sorry, that was a little bit of a slash, but
ooh,
I can't help it. Come on.
uh,
You have an Apple device like I do, and it is not
I
useful,
do.
okay, when it
I
comes
have
to
two. I
AI.
have a personal one and a work one,
Yeah,
and I
well,
have my MacBook. Although I'm still on an M1 Pro, I think. I'm
I'm on
surprised.
an M4,
I was about to say I'm surprised you haven't upgraded to an M5 Max, knowing
no, but I
you.
do have an M4. I do have an M4, and I have an M4, iPad, so, I have,
Yeah. Okay, fair enough, show off. Our techie genius at the startup was telling me about how much you can spec an M5 Max up to. I mean, it's like you can get to like
Yeah.
128 gigabytes of RAM.
Unbelievable. I did actually look at it
Yeah, and
to
then like
admit that I did check it out.
terabytes of solid storage, and then the Max chip, and it ends up being in UK pounds like 7,000
Yeah.
something. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
which is
no,
quite
it
pricey.
is not cheap. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And for
and I
some,
mean, to be fair, this M4 Pro that I bought, I got a Max and I loaded it up too because I thought if it's I try to do every other release of things in Apple world because generally the next one is incrementally better, but not that much incrementally better. So
hmm.
although the M4 to M5 jump was pretty big, but I'm going to hold to M4 and then go to M6 whenever that comes out, I guess. Why did
Hmm.
MI6 just pop into my head? No, never mind. That's
Oh,
not
well,
important.
what's hilarious about it for me is, well, it's that's the naming convention that we have for our motorways, or what you'd say was a highway. Like,
Oh,
so you
you're
have the
right.
M1 and the
You're
M3
right.
and
Oh,
40.
yeah. I knew
So,
that.
yeah, there you go. So, kind of the M6 is a road to me.
Yeah. Well, see, like I said, it's also an MI6, which is a totally different thing. But that takes us back to that first story, and we're not going to go there.
Oh
So,
dear, let's not do that. Please, let's not do that.
yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think, yeah. Anyway, well, so M5 Pro Max minus etc. to one side. Yeah, I mean, I have not had chance to play with the new version. Have you?
No, I have played with done a lot of research around it, but I haven't actually tried it, and I think I probably will have to pop into the Apple store and just go, let me see this. But I am genuinely interested to see if the Apple Intelligence improvements when you incorporate Gemini in it, if it does improve significantly, because it hasn't been that. I mean, we
No,
know Apple's been behind when it comes to AI, so.
indeed. And I was actually meant, have you tried the new Gemini mod?
Yeah, no, I have. I'm sorry. I was thinking Apple. Yeah, I have actually tried it, and I use Gemini and Claude. I do use Claude more, but I use Gemini quite a lot. It does some really, really good things.
It's interesting
Although
because
I do wish one thing, I should tell Google this. I wish they'd stop changing the UI around because they messed me up this week. They took it used to automatically when you said make an image, it would use Nano Banana Pro, and now you have to tell it. You have to go in and literally switch a physical switch to Nano Banana Pro to get it to do images. Otherwise, it just tells you how you could build the image, which is not useful. I got very frustrated the other day with that,
oh,
but
fair
I
enough.
guess that's change is hard, and when change
Uh,
happens every 10 minutes, it's even harder.
Yeah, no, I haven't used it. And the last time it was interesting because, I mean, between Claude and Gemini, the last time I was kind of side by side using them,
Mhm.
I noticed that Claude seemed to have better memory.
It does. Yeah.
So in my experiments with the new version of Gemini, I'll be very curious to see, kind of whether that's moved on in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there's two parts to that, and I think we probably talked about this before, but there's memory, there's context, and there's memory, and they aren't the same
Mm,
thing. And I know we sort of think of them as context, and I guess you could technically say they are, but that's not really true because context is about the knowledge base that you use to get to answer, right? It's you're using some of your local, RAG, or it's your local content, whatever. It knows that context. That's very useful, and the larger the context window, the better. But the other thing that Claude does better than any of the others is remember things. And
mhm.
in other words, I go back into something I've been working on, and I don't have to go, here's the context again. All I have to do is go, okay, let's rerun XYZ on this. And that's it. I don't have to tell it any more than that, and it knows to go do the thing that it did before, and I don't have to, and that is significantly more useful when it comes to doing everyday tasks.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Although I had a funny one the other day, I had an artifact in Claude, and I thought I had a chat associated with it as well. So I asked it to search for the chats for this artifact, and it couldn't find the chat, but we could find the artifact. So I'm like, somewhere there's a disconnect there. Now, but that's just unique to my setup. I don't know. But it was
Hmm,
quite confusing. I had the
interesting.
artifact definitely there, but I couldn't find the related chat.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know. I
But
I mean,
that,
it does well, strange things, I guess that goes under the strange things happens category, which I've also experienced. I mean,
indeed.
I don't yeah, because there are definitely times when I just get annoyed and go, "Okay, I'm just gonna go do something else on another model, and we'll come back to this," or I just, you know, logged out of the app and logged back in. Are you feeling better now? I mean,
Yeah.
but
I shan't say which model it was, but I was playing with one a while ago, and it just kept getting it wrong. And I
Mhm.
can't decide whether it was the paucity of my prompting, or whether it was just whatever. And in the end, I kind of got slightly frustrated. Said, "You are fundamentally getting this wrong over and over and over again, and I don't understand why. So
Mm.
this conversation needs to end."
Well, I was actually this is funny you say that because I was listening to this podcast yesterday and talking this one person was talking about how they use the model and some another, expert of some sort. And they said that in coding, particularly, developers have learned that if the model makes a mistake, if you reprimand it, it does produce better output. They can't explain necessarily why, but if you and so I've tried that a few times too and gone like, okay, that wasn't correct. That actually is a little bit of an embarrassing answer. Can we go back and redo this? And it seems to do better. I don't know why, but I mean, maybe just because it learns on text, it knows reprimanding's bad, and I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, I am disappointed as a user.
yeah,
Um,
I've
yeah.
said that before, and apparently that works well when it's doing code. I don't know.
I read something did read something about that a while ago. It's yeah, just yes. There was something
Yeah,
else I was going to say that I completely forgot it was now.
it's
Uh,
interesting. I can't explain it, but then there's definitely lots of things we haven't been able to explain yet. So
that's the one thing I will say with Claude. I do keep reminding it that it has full permission to be critical
yes,
and
yes.
my work.
Yes. Yeah, it's much less sycophantic than the other models too, which I appreciate, so but of course
Right?
you can tell it, you can set it to be less or more and, like,
Yeah. 'Cause I don't want to be
which
told
is good.
and maybe I do want to be told I'm right when I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, I think if you tell, "I'm feeling particularly undervalued today, can you just make me feel better with every answer?" It would do that. I mean, that's not a
In-
bad thing, I mean,
Indeed.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes you do that when you manage people, you do that with your staff, not necessarily directly, but you give them the point.
Oh, yeah. No, no. Well, there was a couple of times when you and I were working together, and I was horribly jet lagged, and I said to people, "Look, I'm really sorry. I am just exhausted now.
Yeah,
I can operate, and we can work together, but my capacity is going to be limited."
yeah, that's
So, like
fair.
that bit in iRobot, my responses are limited. You need to ask the
Yes,
right questions.
exactly. See, that's I think that we just have to learn that. Well, so one of the other stories that came out today too, because we were talking about Claude, so I want to mention this one too, because I did see this interesting Donald Knuth published a paper called Claude Cycles that he was stunned by Claude's math abilities. This is I think this is interesting. Well, what he said was shock or something like that to Claude Opus 4.6. Apparently, it solved an open graph theory problem that was like wouldn't have been possible with the models a short time ago, which is,
Hmm.
in AI world, that could be 10 minutes or 10 months. I
Yeah,
don't know.
well, about to say, hang on a second.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
know. But apparently it's according to him, we've made a dramatic advance in automatic deduction and creative
and,
problem solving, which is, you know,
Correct me if I'm wrong, because wasn't it specifically that it was about creative problem solving in mathematics as well, rather than just kind of horsepower
it was, yeah, and I mean, we've seen an evolution with math, right? At first, it was just not good at math at all, and then it got okay at math, but it wasn't able to do conceptual, and yeah, and this open graph theory problem was apparently, yeah, it's
Yeah.
conceptual, and yeah.
So do you think that's going to make it into some of those image models where you end up with a hand that's got like 6 fingers on it and stuff like that?
I think it's gonna make it into a place where you get 5 fingers on a hand. I think that was the point.
Well, no, don't you remember? Because one of the issues that they had, a lot of models at first, was they would add extra digits and stuff like that
Uh-huh.
when they're creating images. Very, very strange.
Well,
Yeah.
and, if in images too, like, it couldn't spell text for anything. Like, I would specifically prevent it from using text when I was using ChatGPT for images, but with Banana Pro, I rarely have a problem. Although I did have one problem not long ago where it added an extra E to the end of a word, but it literally it was the second time I'd asked it to do the diagram, and I think it was just angry that I asked it to do something twice.
Well, I mean, here's my completely non-scientific survey on this matter. When people first started using kind of AI image creation tools for LinkedIn posts, you could tell because they had these like infographic type things with nonsense words in them all the time.
Yeah.
Those have largely gone away now, so I'm assuming this is just the evolution of those image models.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it definitely gotten better, so.
Oh dear.
Anyway, all right, well, what else do we have today? Because I know we're gonna be
Well,
running
I'm
pretty
about to
soon.
say, I mean, I just had a quick peek at the clock, and you're going to have to be picky now, otherwise we're going to run out completely out of
Yeah,
time.
well, we are, and I thought maybe let's talk about these 2 stories that are together, and then I definitely have to do our cool tech gadget because I was excited when I found this one. But there's 2 kind of interesting things. So one was, that the, Trump administration had put out this executive order that was supposed to override state AI laws, which I think it's an interesting one, and I won't even comment too much on that, but I just wanted to mention it because it is, we've had some good moves toward some regulation in like California, Texas, some other states. And apparently now from a federal perspective in the US, we're overriding that and saying, oh, you're not allowed to make state laws that regulate AI. It's going to all be done on a federal level, which today has been kind of no regulation. So I thought that was interesting, and then I was gonna say, but unlike the EU, and then, of course, right after that, I found the story that said that EU had actually delayed, use of the AI Act of its high risk rules for another 16 months. So, apparently, regulation is being moved out a bit on both sides of the pond.
Yeah, I mean, and I hadn't read the EU piece. I didn't know that had been delayed. Did they give a reason as to why it had been delayed?
No, it was, I mean, I'm sure there is some reason, but it seemed to me like it was more that they had been convinced that they didn't have all the tools in place to manage to actually confirm the that you were in compliance or out of compliance. So
And have kind of mechanisms to govern it essentially and monitor it.
yeah, yeah. So apparently it was more of a technical issue than anything, but it is interesting to see. And I mean, we both talked about how we believe there should be some regulation around AI. And in the US, we're bad at regulation in general when it comes to privacy and AI and things like that. But it looked like you guys were ahead at the EU, and now apparently, well, you're not in the EU, you're Great Britain,
Hang on a
but you
second.
used to be.
I'm about to say, yes, you'll upset certain
Sorry,
segments.
sorry, I didn't mean to. But anyway, it's adjacent. And anyway, apparently, from a regulation standpoint, we're not going fast in either direction right now. But it is fair to say maybe some of that is in fact that it's difficult to enforce some of those regulations or
I,
even have the
I
tooling in
think
place to do
AI is simply the latest, greatest, supercharged version of many different technologies that have caused similar problems in the past.
that. Yeah,
Um, and that's it, isn't it? Really, because it moves. I mean, we've talked about it. We talked about it today. We talked about it every other episode before this. The speed at which things are moving is significant. Again, there's no understatement for you.
yeah, yeah,
Clearly, I've got a week of understatement for some reason. So that's going on, and you can regulate and regulate and regulate. And I personally believe that regulation should play an important role in how we use this kind of technology. The problem is, I mean, how do you, and as well, how do you enforce it as well, right? So,
yeah.
um,
I, I mean that it is a complicated question, and even though I do think we have to work out some sort of regulation around it, it's everything's moving very quickly, and I guess you have to be just as careful on the other end that regulation doesn't stifle innovation. Although I do hope that it does protect the population in some manner.
well, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, and you sort of mentioned about science fiction earlier. Kind of it almost for me, there's two things. One's kind of joking, and one's kind of serious. The serious one, I suppose, is I think you have to fall into talking about kind of principles. So you're trying to say very specifically about this specific technical capability isn't going to work. Yeah,
Mm,
because let's say you can't do that particular technical thing anymore. There'll be a different way of doing it, or whatever that gets invented, or it changes and becomes irrelevant. I don't
yeah.
think law can keep up with. I don't think regulation,
No,
law, legal stuff can keep up with
no,
that. So
no.
you get kind of the principles debate, and then I think kind of excuse me, the and what we're talking about here is, and I do believe it, a technology which is definitely unlike other technologies previously.
It
Its
is. No,
power
it
to
is. It is,
disrupt
and the rate of change is unbelievable, and you're right. I mean, how does regulation keep up with that? I don't know. I mean, you have to come up with some way that provides a framework that without providing the technical detail, because we know that's gonna change in nanoseconds, right?
Indeed, and I think even and I said it's sort of somewhat joking, it's somewhat serious. You kind of start thinking along the lines of things like Asimov's three laws of robotics,
Yeah,
and kind of at that level of principle, do we
yeah.
say that AI must behave in this way and do this thing and do
Yeah,
this
do
thing,
no harm. Do
not
no
do
harm.
this and not do this thing, and then judge based on that? I don't know how feasible that is.
I don't know.
Um, but it feels to me like that's kind of the where we're heading to some degree.
I mean, to some extent, if you think about the original story that we talked about with Anthropic, the idea of specific red lines around certain types of activities, not how it's done, but the fact that you can or can't do it, that is kind of conceptually the only way I can think of that we can manage it right now. You can't use our tech to build autonomous weapons. That seems like a reasonable red line. You can't spy on your own people using that. That seems like a reasonable red line. I don't know. I to me it almost seems like social good versus preventing social wrong with the application of the technology, not how, but the fact that you could or couldn't do it. That maybe that is the only way to regulate it right now.
I don't know. How would you feel about this one? So what if I said um, one of the rules? So we've got Asimov's laws of robotics. This is going to be Pringle's laws of AI. You cannot lie to a human being.
I mean, that was I think that's an interesting one. You know, I I I'd like to I think those are kinds of things. I mean, maybe you have to go to that level, right? Do no wrong, do no harm in this
Then
way
who
or
who
whatever.
decides in some cases what a lie is, what's true, what isn't true?
Well, I mean, of course, then we get more philosophical around that detail. You're right. I don't know. I mean, because we'd like to think truth is black or white, and sometimes it's not. So, yeah, I
No,
don't know.
indeed,
I
especially
don't
when
know.
it comes to personal values and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is
Well,
interesting.
yeah. So with
I
that, I'm gonna give you something fun to talk about, and that is Legos. Because I mean, who doesn't love Legos, right?
That's a fair
I
point.
was so excited when I saw this.
Well,
Lego has
tell
introduced
me about them because I have not read about these. I've
well, so
somewhat been.
Lego introduced something they're calling a smart brick. So this is an AI powered smart play system. Now, I actually went in and watched a video demo of this because I was so excited. I love Legos, right? So I thought, oh, cool. Let me see. And it's all the original ones that they've released. There's like, I don't know, four or five of them right now are Star Wars based, which of course you and I would definitely resonate with. And the idea is they have this little brick that has certain capabilities built into it. It has like sensors and accelerometers and different things like that. It can make noise and whatever. And you plug that into whatever you're building, and it makes that a smart model. And it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty basic right now, and but nonetheless, the idea of I just like the idea of moving down a path that says you take these toys you construct and you can make them more interactive in some way using AI. Now that's a use of AI that I thought was pretty cool, right? Uh,
Uh, yeah, I mean, so I'm probably a Lego purist in some ways, which is that I've always felt that the best things that you can build are like that. As a kid, I did not have a lot of sets of Lego. I had a big box of lots and lots of Lego, and I used to make
mm,
stuff. absolutely. And I think that
Yeah.
was one of the joys of it for me. And I've got a fun throwaway comment on that on the subject of that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think I suppose the comment I was going to make was it depends how smart they are, right? So I know parents often complain about stepping on their kids' Legos. Is it smart enough to help that stop happening?
I don't know. I mean, if it makes sound, maybe it yells at you, "Don't step on me."
You know, you're about to step on me. Don't do it.
Right? I mean, that would actually be a useful addition.
That's pretty.
I when I looked at them, I thought, maybe I'll buy one of the models and have it as a demo, and then I realized that the cheapest one was like $70, and I'm like, "No,
Oof.
that's probably not good for a demo. I'm gonna skip that for now."
Yeah. Maybe that's a little bit ATT for the purposes of. Yeah, I was Legos are great. I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
And I had a fantastic. It was the best thing ever. I had a Lego train set,
Wow. Wow.
and it had power. So my parents, I don't know how they found this is a long time before the days of eBay. When I was a kid, my parents found one because they couldn't afford to buy one new, so they bought one second hand. I don't know how they found it, but they did. And I had this Lego set, so you could basically on obviously the wheels and the track are pretty set, but then you can mess with, kind of what you build to go on top of it. It was so cool, and that's smart enough for me, Michael. That's smart enough for me.
I yeah, I don't know. I'm going for more. I'm going for
You're
more.
going for more, as always, as
Yeah.
always.
But I think I am gonna have to go to the toy store and check this out in person.
Go check it out. I have to be honest. I will get the opportunity to go shopping with one of my nephews or nieces. I shall go and have a look.
That'd be good. And see that you've got a good excuse. You've got a child you could buy one for, and that would be for the child, not
Wouldn't
not
all be.
not for
It
you.
wouldn't all be for me.
No, definitely wouldn't be. That was see, I couldn't come up with a good excuse. Like the only excuse I have is my dog wanted it, and that's probably not gonna work. So, because I think both of my daughters are well beyond the Lego phase. So, oh, well.
I don't think if you're a Lego fan, I don't think you ever get beyond
Well, see, now I would say that too, because I'm definitely not beyond the Lego phase. But
and it's
whatever.
any excuse, kind of.
Mhm.
It's all that sort of stuff. Oh, look, I can go and sit and build stuff. Yay!
Right, right. And it talks to me now. Yay.
In some ways, a very simple creature. I am in some ways.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for this week or this month, I guess. I'm good stories, and we did skip a few things in there, but hopefully we got the most important parts. And the Lego thing that was by far the most important part from my on my list. So I wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
came out.
fair enough.
So anyway, I'm Michael Fauscette.
I'm Tom Pringle.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again for another AI Pulse. And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arionresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arionresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arion Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.